Welcome back, everybody. This is Brian and Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security.
Hello.
Yeah, so today we're going to continue our discussion that we had last week on the OWASP Top 10. We're going to go 5 through 1 this time. But first, before we do that, I would like, the Breaking Down Security family here is always about improving ourselves, and I thought I'd take a few seconds here to let Mr. Betcher talk about an accomplishment of his.
Oh, yeah. This morning I passed my GWAP exam, so I'm now a certified application pen tester, right?
At least you got the acronym right.
I did.
That's all important.
I did. So, yeah, GWAP, SAN certification, took the course with Mr. Kevin Johnson, and, went and passed my test. So, I guess I can hack websites now officially with permission.
Yes, if any of you consultants or security headhunters out there are looking for somebody to hire, Mr. Betcher is always looking for opportunities in that sphere of fun.
I don't know if I'll pursue the red team route. The reason I took the course and learned about hacking was I'm more of a defense type of guy. I like the home field advantage. I like to build things. I always thought that you need to know your enemy, right? Sun Tzu said, know your enemy and know yourself, and you will win 100 battles and not lose one, right? So on the defense side, you can't lose a battle. So you have to know how the hackers think, and what better way to learn that than to learn from the best. And I think I did that. At least I tried. I'll probably never be a great hacker, but at least I know how they operate. I know how they think, or at least I think I do. And so I'm hoping that this will make me better at defense.
Yep. Well, that's awesome. That is incredibly awesome. Congratulations, my friend. It's a worthy accomplishment. And hopefully when I get to see Mr. Secure Ideas himself in a couple of weeks, we'll be able to sit down and talk about mine that I take on Tuesday.
Oh, no. Now you've set yourself up.
Oh, God, I know.
See, I didn't want to say anything because if I happen to not make it, then no one would know.
That's cool, because if I don't pass it, I'm going to be on the SANS.org site spending $350 for another retest. So,
yeah.
I'm going to pass that mother. It's just going to cost me. It's just going to cost me more money.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so that's fantastic. You can add that little moniker to the end of your LinkedIn profile and email signatures on Monday.
But yeah, something we preach here is always keep learning, and that's why we do what we do.
That's right.
Always keep learning. Always keep advancing. Otherwise, if you don't advance and you stay the same. You may think you know a lot of stuff, but people will pass you by, and the attackers will pass you by.
Yep.
I think that we're getting better as defenders, as security profession overall. We're getting better, but I think the delta may be increasing more rapidly. Sad to say.
Do you think that the training is outpacing the knowledge of the attackers?
I think the knowledge of the security community in general, as far as the overall websites today, companies today, and their approach to security is getting outpaced by the attackers.
Sure.
And that's largely due to new technology coming out. Mm-hmm. The attackers know how to exploit that much faster than companies know how to defend it.
Well, with every new technology out there has code behind it. So ideally, if developers went through things like threat modeling or Microsoft's Secure SDLC and using the Stride checklist, that kind of thing, I would imagine that would help reduce the number of web application vulnerabilities or even any kind of application vulnerabilities. But,
right. And in today's world where profits mean everything, I think companies are hiring developers who haven't been trained in security, or they get developers for hire temporarily for a project. They outsource their development, and they really don't know what they're jumping into.
Mm-hmm. Or they've been improperly trained to not realize that security is important. Or they think, oh, we'll just, put it in later because we've got a deadline. And doing proper, project management or whatever, you either have to add features and add time, or you're going to reduce your scope and, get it out on time. So a lot of times reducing scope, security is not considered high enough, and it's one of the first things on the chopping block. Okay, we don't need to sanitize those inputs right now. We'll just deal with that later. And unfortunately, dealing with that later is often a crisis, where then you have to pull in a bunch of people to fix, say, a cross-site scripting vulnerability. And if you don't fix it right then, you're going to always be spending additional monies and additional amounts of time to fix, to patch the boat again as it starts gaining leaks. So.
Yeah. And we'll talk about sanitizing inputs later, but
yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, we got on a little bit of a trek, with your GWAP, but yes, it was a well deserved on your part, and I am definitely going to be working that much harder to try to beat you in your score on Tuesday.
Yeah, and I'm not going to tell you what was on the test, because then I'll have this. Well, you passed because I, gave you a little hint or something. Plus, it's unethical anyway. So,
well, plus
I won't put that on you and give you any hints. How about that?
I appreciate that. Plus, I think from what Mr. Kevin was saying, the SANS folks take that pretty seriously, and they probably get your CISSP revoked if you did something like that too. So, you'd be worse off than you are now. We digressed a little bit there, but we're still going to go back and do the OWASP Top 10, starting from number 5.
Okay, number 5, security misconfiguration. Go for it.
Well, security misconfiguration can happen anywhere, from infrastructure to the web server to the application that you're running on there, or even the database, or any of the code that custom code you've created. So if you've got a WordPress server or a WordPress site running on an Apache server with a Linux operating system, security misconfiguration could be you have a world writable Apache directory and you're running modules in Apache that don't need to be running, say, mod proxy or mod rewrite. And then your WordPress is an outdated version that doesn't have all the necessary, updates. And then you may have written a special widget or something for your WordPress site that has the ability to inject, or it has the ability to allow for code injection, which is another vulnerability we're going to meet later on. But you have to. One of the ways to get around that is you need to have a common baseline, especially in the enterprise, so that when you build a web server, you're not enabling, weak SSL ciphers, for instance, or you're not using the improper SSL ciphers. There may be ones that open you up to, like we talked about, beast and crime attacks. So you may not want to use those if that's a problem for you.
Right, and we talked about this last week. Only use what is necessary. Don't just install or let the defaults just sit out there, because you probably don't need half of them.
Yep.
Well, I mean, how about this one? If you listen to our cloud podcast, right? If you misconfigure your virtual environment, you open up things to the world, right? So
that's true.
It can happen in the cloud as well. There are standards out there. What's the documents that come out? The name escapes me.
For what?
We were
the
looking
CIS
at
benchmarks?
Yeah, the CIS benchmarks.
CIS benchmarks.
Yeah,
there's also NSA, before they turned to total and utter shite and evil. They had a nice Red Hat. They were one of the first to publish a Red Hat hardening guide, which... was really good, because it was one of the few that they had out there. When I was in the military, they had the DISA Gold Disc, which that probably takes some of our listeners back a little ways, because it had 2 different versions on the Gold Disc. It had Gold, and I believe it had a Platinum version at one time. And if you did Platinum, it applied basically every access protocol imaginable. And if you were using it on an existing box, it would do things like not make you able to connect to the domain anymore. You'd lose network connectivity, that kind of thing. So,
I guess the idea would be to start with that and then,
yes,
add functionality to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're building something from scratch, always start with the most secure components or configuration, and then as you require it, then add that feature.
Yep. Yeah, because that was one thing they were like, oh, this could cause undesired operation. I love that term, undesired operation.
Yeah.
And in fact, it did. It just totally hosed up a bunch of Windows servers. Thankfully, we tested it on something other than our DC at the time. But yeah, so when you're hardening things, they have to make sense too. You just don't want to harden for the fact that you need to harden.
And it's kind of like whitelist versus blacklist. Don't start with doing everything and then take away stuff that you don't need. Start with not allowing anything and then add things that are required for your business.
Yeah, I was thinking about the gold disk. The CIS benchmarks are much the same way. You can, applying all the CIS benchmarks can also brick a server or cause problems too. So I think we've had a couple of our servers blow up because of that.
In the military or?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think they were test boxes that we were testing the CIS benchmarks on, but we knew enough to test it before we deployed it. That's another thing. When you're doing security configurations, you probably need to test them out on dummy boxes before you deploy them, because otherwise...
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it just makes total sense to do that ahead of time. So...
Okay, that one's pretty easy to understand. Just configure things properly and securely. Just try to start with... the most hardened system that you can and work your way out.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Number 4, insecure direct object references.
This one's kind of it doesn't make sense when you read it, but it actually means I would have called it something else.
I would have called it like information leakage.
Yeah, but I think there might actually be a specific one called information leakage that means technically something else, but this seems like a more serious information leakage than, a certain type of information leakage.
Okay. Well, like directory browsing, if you allow directory browsing in your web app, an attacker can spider a site to find, files or pages that are mistakenly allowed to access by underprivileged users.
That's like Dirbuster.
Dirbuster, yeah.
Right?
In fact, OWASP, we're talking about the OWASP Top 10. OWASP actually created Dirbuster, right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah. And it's basically a whitelist that Dirbuster runs through to find specific directories.
A database that it runs
through, yeah. Another thing that you could do is looking at the robots.txt, and that would allow you to find directories if the site has a robots.txt.
I love that.
Yeah.
Please, you can scan me, but don't scan these sensitive items. Please don't do it.
Well, because they don't want Google to index it, but I've heard that Google doesn't always listen to the robots.txt. So, it's often better if you don't put your important information inside your web root directory. So, I have a story on this because I remember listening to the Risky Business podcast back in 2011, and they were talking about, they called it first state superannuation. And for those of our listeners who don't know, Risky Business is a podcast by Patrick Gray, and he's in Australia. I listen to it because it's a nice way of hearing what people outside the U.S., they often have a different point of view with regard to how badly America is spying on them and other things. But you get a different point of view. So one of the things they were talking about, a superannuation in Australia is like their retirement plan. They have like a nationwide retirement plan, like a 401k. And they had this company that was running it. And it was called First State. And this gentleman who has a superannuation account logged into F State or First State or something and brought up his account. And it was, www.firststate.org/account number equals, 001. So he was like, well, let me just go and put in 002. And in fact, he did. And he got somebody else's account information and numbers and such. And he tried contacting First State about it, and they raised a big stink about it. They said there wasn't a problem, and they tried to get him on charges of computer hacking.
Oh, that happens all the time. I hate that. You hear stories like that where somebody will try to disclose something and they get threatened.
That's right. And come to find out, thankfully, I believe the media caught wind of the story before they could really do anything to him, and caused a massive investigation on First State, and they had to fix the issue. But that's just one example of how a direct object reference can work. I mean, it can be something as simple and unintrusive as you needing to, if you want to look through help desk tickets, you can often do a new, fix the number at the end of the URL, because it'll be like, www.ticketdesk.org/ticket number equals, and then you can just change that number and have it, go to a different ticket if you were looking for a different ticket number.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a way to, if you were trying to find information and you had access to a help desk system to,
Okay. And you can also, like some developers will put things in the code like a function, and then they'll either comment it out or hide it somehow from normal users, so they think. So if you view source or whatever, you see that function, and then you can call it through a interception proxy, something like that, and you can gain privileges that way, or call a function that requires higher privileges. Maybe it's visible to admins but not you, but then of course you can see it there and just call it.
Yep. Yeah, that would be a way to do it as well. So the way they suggested is you want to check the access. So every time, ideally this happens, I want to say it happens every time on a site where you're logged in. But if you are logged in on that site and somebody has access to their report, when they make a new request for another record or for another, object in the group, like another report, they recommend, OWASP anyway, recommends that you check to see if the user who's logged in has the ability to access that site. And that may be where it falls short. They don't often have that kind of back end where, they're checking for that kind of thing.
They
just say, they just assume, okay, he's logged in, and that's pretty much giving them access to everything.
Or they have access to this subdirectory if they're an admin, but if you can browse to it, they assume that the client is trusted at that point.
Yeah. So you need to go a little bit further when you're building your applications that allow you to look up reports and make sure that you're setting proper permissions on everything, and that you're doing lookups to make sure that the person who's logged in has access to those things, because that's definitely information leakage. And that guy did not have to do any kind of disclosure. He could have gained hundreds of thousands of records. He had all kinds of information. He had the NSN, which is their version of the Social Security number. They call it the National Taxpayer Number or something. That's not NSN, is it? It has, I think it's called NSN or something like that. But yeah, it had all personal information, people's names, addresses, where they live, their taxpayer ID kind of things. I mean, he could have done untold numbers of damage, but he chose to disclose it, which was nice.
Yeah, he could have went to the press as like a, what do you call it? Witness.
An unnamed source.
An unnamed source. Yeah, I could have done something like that, but unfortunately, it caused him a lot of heartache. But he was just trying to do the right thing. Hey, you need to fix this, and they just kept denying it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna put the link in the show notes to that risky business interview, and you can Patrick actually interviewed the guy after everything had blown over, and he went over exactly how he did it, and what happened, and how people came and knocked on his door, and the police didn't even. Well, I guess just listen to the interview. I don't want to tell you too much. So
okay, next, cross-site scripting. Ooh.
I don't know. Maybe we should let the brand new GWAP guy tell us what that is, because I'm just some ignorant hick from the sticks and don't know what that is.
What is it? Oh, okay. So an attacker, what, tricks the browser into executing code, right? So it has to do with trust. The attacker tricks the browser into executing code that trusting that it came from the application when it didn't.
But that can actually exist on the client too, can't it?
Can it exist on the client? What do you mean?
Well, can you do cross-site scripting on a client?
Well, yeah, that's DOM based, right?
What? Give that man a certification, by God. Yes, client cross.
Leading me into that one, huh?
That's right. Client cross-site scripting occurs when an untrusted user supplied data is used to update the DOM with an unsafe JavaScript call.
Okay, yeah, there's 3 types. There's DOM-based, there's reflective, and there's persistent.
That's right. Yep.
Okay, you know what persistent is?
You're persistent. I don't know. Hang on, let me get back to Shut up! I know what I'm doing. So, see, they call it on OWASP. They don't call it persistent. They call it stored, which doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I've always called it persistent.
It's persistent because it's always there on the page. I mean, you don't have to click it. It just the classic example is what a forum. So you post something to a forum and you stick in a script in there, and the client, some other person looking at the forum loads that page and the script runs on his browser.
Yeah, either that or they do something like they do with JavaScript where they say on load, or they use a not an on submit, what do they call it? On mouse over. So somebody just has to move their mouse over the link, and it will, or a picture even, and it will automatically load the bad JavaScript. And that's something that, stays on the site constantly. So
now Kevin Johnson told us one where I can't remember the guy's name, but he wrote a book about cross-site scripting, and in the description of the book on Amazon, there was a persistent cross-site scripting. He put it in the description. So when you looked at when you clicked on the book and the page loaded in Amazon to tell you about the book, boom, you got a pop-up. Yeah. Cross-site scripting. So you had
that was cross-site scripting put in by the person itself, right?
No, it was persistent because it was on the page. He wrote the description to the book on Amazon because the author can write the description of his own book. So he did that, put the script code in there.
Oh, right.
And so when you load the page on Amazon, it they have since fixed it, but it's a good story nonetheless.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So they're usually, and I've seen this a lot when you have pen testers or somebody come in, they always do the little pop-up box on your site. It's like, your script tags, open close script tags, and then it's alert, XSS, and then it submits it, and if you've got cross-site scripting, your little gray box pops up and it says XSS.
Yeah.
And there's more ways of doing it, but that's always it's just
the example. It's like Hello World, right?
Or popping calc on a Windows box to show you can do remote code. I don't know, is that remote code execution?
I've never heard of popping calc.
Yeah, calculator.exe, calc.exe.
Oh.
When you pop calc or notepad.
Yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Because that means you've hacked into the box and you can run pretty much any program you want, but, they do the non-destructive programs.
Yeah, execute calculator program. Okay,
yeah, instead of format.exe or something, they... True story. And so... but yeah, I think that's the easy way of running calc, because if you can do that, then you can do everything. So
sure.
All right. So, there's a lot of information on cross-site scripting out there, and multitudes of different ways of doing things.
So really important here. It doesn't have to be JavaScript. It can be any script that your browser runs. VB script.
VB script, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Java applets even.
Really?
Now, JavaScript is not the same as Java. Okay?
What?
Not the same. No. So it can
Missed that
affect Java
test.
as
I
well.
missed that on the test. Yeah, I missed that
Seriously?
on the test.
Okay.
No,
Well, anyway. So don't assume that blocking JavaScript is the cure for cross-site
that's
scripting.
true. Who told us that? I heard that somewhere else.
I don't know.
Okay. But yeah, Flash, JavaScript, VB script, any kind of script. Actually, if Python and Ruby, even if
Well, if your browser can run Python and Ruby, then your browser would be vulnerable. I don't know if browsers do. I don't think they do.
yeah, no, I don't think it does either.
PHP, right?
PHP, yeah, PHP is another one. Yeah, so
Well,
yeah,
no, PHP is server side.
well, yeah, but you can
Right.
inject stuff into PHP, I would imagine.
We need to look that up.
Yeah,
No, footnote. Cut that out of the podcast, please.
yeah, I'll do
No,
that.
but there are, just keep in mind, there's no protections in your browser. Okay, so if you say, well, I updated my browser and it says something about cross-site scripting that it prevents blah, blah. No, there's nothing in your browser that prevents cross-site scripting. Don't ever depend on your browser.
Well,
Okay?
or
the user's browsers.
there are rudimentary protections in IE and Firefox and Chrome, but you're right. There is no current browser that will fully protect you against a cross-site scripting attack.
Now, they may prevent against automated attacks, but we're talking about protection from actual people who
Yes,
who can say, well, this didn't work. Well, let me change it a little bit, blah, 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 and
exactly.
boom.
Exactly.
All right. And you've got, like you mentioned, some protections. You've got the same origin policy, which, when you accept a script from one domain, it can't receive a response from a different domain. So that is one protection, and it would be bad if browsers didn't adhere to same origin policy.
It's true. It's very true. And so let's see. Wow, we're just kind of breezing through this, aren't we?
Breezing through. No,
Well,
we've talked a while.
Oh, that's true. Okay. So, we'll post some links in the show notes about cross-site scripting where you can go. One of the good things is that's still actually good today, even though Mr. Arsnake wrote it a while ago. Robert Hansen, Arsnake, did the OWASP cross-site scripting cheat sheet, which is always a good thing to go through. I'm also going to put one in there about a PDF that does not have any cross-site scripting in it. That's a persistent cross-site scripting, or no, a DOM-based cross-site scripting.
Yeah, there was one where if you you could put some script in a link. It's kind of reflective cross-site scripting as well. But you put a script in a link, and when someone went to that link, it had a PDF in it?
Malicious PDF, yeah. Or even
no, just a regular PDF. It was any link that had a PDF, and when that PDF loaded, your browser took the code in the link and ran it as if it were, running it in the PDF itself, and you were susceptible to that. Not anymore, I guess, if you haven't updated Adobe,
a
reader and whatnot, but yeah, that was one example.
Yeah, they screwed up the PDF specification when they started allowing dynamic content like JavaScript and God only knows what else. So, yeah, there's a lot of good information out there. I'll try to put a couple links in the show notes that you can
Now,
follow.
is the cheat sheet, that's for developers, right? That's not for attackers.
Anything can be used for attack. But yeah, technically the idea is if you're a developer, then that will help you explain how they work and what you can use to help protect your sites or your web apps against cross-site scripting attacks, DOM, reflective, and persistent. So,
okay.
And of course, it's the only one on the OWASP Top 10 that is extremely widespread. I mean, they gave this thing like a magenta alert, whoop whoop, DEFCON 1 kind of, prevalence or whatever.
Yeah, very widespread. Most web applications. Well, if you get a good pen tester, there's probably a 95% chance that they're going to find cross-site scripting somewhere. And if they don't, then maybe there's something wrong. I mean, that's what Kevin said. He was like,
It's true.
If I don't find cross-site scripting, I'm thinking, what am I doing wrong here?
Yeah.
Right? It's so
He's not looking
prevalent.
hard enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So, but yeah, it's the only one with the prevalence where, everybody's doing it because it's just so easy to screw up and not sanitize your inputs, do the whitelisting bit, make sure that your fields only allow for certain character sets, numbers, letters, that kind of thing.
True that. Let's move on to number 2.
We did. Oh, that was number 3. Okay. I'm sorry.
Can you believe it? It's number 3. It's so widespread, and it's not even, that high.
That's true. Yeah.
So apparently number 2 is broken authentication and session management.
Yep. That would be things like session fixation allows for session fixation when you're breaking your when you got session IDs in your URL or you're not sending cookies properly.
Well, session fixation would be you visit a website. You haven't logged in yet, but you got a session ID. Okay. Yep. After you log in, you get the same session ID. So it's fixed. When you build a site and you have authentication take place, you have to give them a new session ID, whether it's a cookie, token, whatever.
Yeah. And there's really 3 places that you can store a session token. You either put it in a hidden form field or URL argument or a session cookie. And, there's numbers of reasons why you shouldn't put it into a URL. But, the idea is once you authenticate, you're supposed to get a brand new one. If you don't do that, well, how is that different than cross-site? It's not cross-site request forgery. What was I thinking? There's another one that reminded me of this. It was like session hijacking or something like that. How is this any different than session hijacking, I wonder?
Session hijacking.
Because if you were able to gain a hold of somebody's, URL and, using like cross-site request forgery, you could, gain access to their site. So that's another reason why you would need to do session, make sure you don't have session fixation.
That's right.
Let me go look here. Cookie hijacking. It's the exploitation of valid a computer session called a session key to gain unauthorized access. So cookie hijacking, session hijacking.
It's just where the attacker gains access to their session in some way. It could be, let's say you have the session ID in the URL and you say, hey, everybody, I want you to go here and view this document or whatever. So you send your URL with the session ID in it to everybody They click the link. They're in your session.
Yep.
Right?
That's why it's
just unknowingly hijacked your session.
Well, you were an idiot and sent them your session. So.
Well, I hate to say idiot because a lot of people don't know that number up there, even though it says ID equals, is your session ID.
True. So how do you fix that issue?
Well, don't put it in the URL, have a quick timeout, have the user re-authenticate when they're doing something that requires privileges, things like that.
Yeah.
It depends on your application.
You can actually make it so that every time you make a request from the client back to the server, your session ID gets regenerated, and that's another way to do it. You set your HTTP only cookies so that you don't have scripts or anything that will automatically call your cookies in the DOM.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the types of session management, right?
Sure.
So you've got basic. Now, the problem with basic authentication is there's no encryption, there's no account lockout, and there's no max login attempts. So you can see the flaws there. I could, man in the middle, right? I can get your login and password. And when I say I'm kind of confused right now as, because I just got this new certification, right? I'm thinking like an attacker. So
that's right.
So I'm saying the attackers there gain.
Well, you mentioned there's no lockout. So you could try several million times with a rainbow table basically and guess your passwords that way.
Right. You can just brute force the crap out of it. There's no lockout.
Yep.
So then there's digest. So they've improved on basic. With digest, they've added encryption.
Yep.
Raise the roof, baby, encryption. But there's still no account lockout and no max attempts. So still it can be brute forced if you don't have, or if the user doesn't have a good password. So, and then there's a couple other types. There's integrated Windows. That's where if you log in, you authenticate with the domain server, and then if you go visit an application on that domain, you just give them your token. You don't really log in. The client just gives the token to the application, and the application's like, oh, okay, you're logged in.
Yeah, that's your Kerberos token or the auth token. They also call it's also like Kerberos.
So the problem with that is the client machine is always logged on. If they're logged into the domain, they're logged into all the applications that use Windows integrated. So even if they don't have any knowledge of the application itself, they've never been there, they could still log in because they have a token. And if their machine is compromised, then the attacker can have access to all those applications without even having to know username, password.
That's right.
Then there's form-based, right? Forms-based authentication. That one can be really secure, but it's only secure as the developer makes it. So if the developer screws that up, it's game over.
They probably, do some MD5 encryption on that, and triple des encoding, that kind of stuff, so they can, I'm being facetious. I know the difference. Yeah. I know the difference.
And then the last of the major types of authentication that you'll see is OAuth, and that basically I wouldn't use this, but it delegates the authentication to third parties, right? Like Facebook or Twitter or whatever.
Link. Actually, I've seen that quite a bit. Microsoft has it now. Yep. LinkedIn has it. You can authorize with your Twitter account or any social network site, pretty much. And
so then that's subject to spoofing. So if you spoof another site, you'll authenticate to that one instead.
Yep.
Yeah. So they all have their weaknesses, obviously. So I myself like the forms based, and I like to train developers on coding securely.
Yep. It's crazy. I saw a diagram once, and I may try to find it again to put in the show notes for this, but it had OAuth has 25 different steps when you suggest to a website to use Facebook to log you in. There's 25 different steps that have to go through between you and Facebook and the app, you and the app, that kind of thing, gaining, back and forth, all the back and forth between the three parties. There's 8 different steps on every side of them, and it's just super complicated. I don't know how this trust model works for them, but apparently it's working pretty well because everybody does it.
Well, yeah. And if you trust Facebook, if you trust that the guy has a Facebook, you want to authenticate to that, fine. I mean, it depends on how much you want to spend on, developing this and how sensitive your data is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just another way of, it's basically delegating all that to third parties. So.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
So the last one and the top
one more thing.
Oh, okay.
The absolute worst is if you're, you OAuth to the site that uses basic authentication. So that would be the worst of all worlds, right?
Oh God, yes, I think it would, because that definitely wouldn't be a good thing.
Make sure you choose a reputable third party.
Yeah, or they don't use SSH or not SSH, SSL for encryption or something. So it does happen, I'm sure.
And we can spend, like you said, 10 minutes probably on all the steps that it takes to do the authentication between grinding tokens, talking between client and app and third party, all that stuff. It's a big mess in my opinion, but it works.
Yep. I'll find the fancy graphic and post it to to a link or whatever.
You're committing quite a bit.
I know. Don't worry. I'll listen to the podcast during editing and remember that. So don't worry about it. So I'm going to do the last one. Number one. Dun, da, 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 so actually I should have went da 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 brr, like on Price is Right or whatever. Yeah. So the top one, and I don't think it was the top one in 2010, but it's kind of taken over because of the extreme massive use of, in particular, one part of it is injection. And that would be, I would assume the reason it hit number one with a bullet this year, or in 2013, was because of SQL injection.
Well, injection encompasses a lot of things, okay?
Sure.
You can have cross-site request forgery is injection. Cross-site scripting is injection. All these things are part of injection. I don't know how they broke it down this way or why they chose just injection. But injection is basically you as the application accept input from a user and you trust it. That's basically what injection is. You trust them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got SQL injection, you have LDAP injection, which is basically where you're querying the database of users or whatever, and if you don't properly injected LDAP server, I guess, will dump your information for your users. There's a couple others that I'm not sure about. There's one called XPath and one called NoSQL that they mention. They call out specifically on the OWASP site. And, those are, I would assume, other ways of gaining access to database information or to XML-based files. I think that's what XPath is.
Okay.
But, yeah, I think the reason that 2013 it hit really, really big and hit number one was... if you don't, this is the impact is severe, and as we've seen with any data breach like Adobe or Target or what have you. Well, Target wasn't a cross SQL injection.
Well, injection was number one in 2010 as well, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. If you scroll up to page 5 or something, I don't know what changed, but yeah, it was number one back then. So like I mentioned, cross-site scripting or cross-site request forgery, it's injection and session because you need a valid session to inject a transaction. So it kind of merges those two. So you've got cross-site request forgery. HTTP response splitting is one. The attacker's able to inject headers that will reflect to the client. You've got, of course, you mentioned SQL injection, and that's one of the OWASP that we talked about. That's a type of injection.
Yep.
Cross-site scripting is a type of injection. You've got code injection, where you can inject code like PHP, run within the application. And you've also got command injection. Ooh, my favorite, command injection.
Yeah, there you go. Get some hot command injection.
Yep. You run, ls, list files in certain directories, list the password file, all kinds of good stuff with command injection.
Yeah, the if you wanted to be nice about command injection, you want to do something like ping or ls or something like that instead of something destructive like, cat Etsy password or cat Etsy shadow, those kinds of things. RM-RF star, or little Bobby drop tables, that kind of thing.
So attackers can inject shells, OS commands, they can inject files, they can inject client-side code, transactions, all kinds of stuff. So, injection encompasses a lot of the top 10. All right, it's just an overall category. I don't know why it did that, but hey.
I actually see them in the next few years as taking cross-site request forgery, cross-site scripting, and all those, and putting them underneath injection flaws because
as a sub.
Yeah, and I've seen that because I do some of the training on Pen Tester Academy, and he did a whole section on what they called HTML injection, and if you remember from our class with Kevin, he said HTML injection is just cross-site scripting. It's just
Yeah, I remember that. That's right.
Yeah. And he showed an example of how you can make one form actually go away, and then he puts in a malicious form. But I was like, yeah, it's just cross-site scripting.
You
You're
just give it a
not,
new name, and then you're famous. Oh, I got this new cool attack.
yeah, exactly. You're using
Listen to
using
me.
HTML tags instead of scripting tags or whatever,
Yeah.
So, yeah, so this one, exploitability is pretty easy because it's a text-based attack. It doesn't really require any script in this case, I don't think. Like for SQL, all you need is a single quote, space, or one equals one dash dash, and
kind of you're oversimplifying SQL injection, but the biggest way to tell or the easiest way to tell is just put a single quote in an input field, hit enter, and if you get some kind of an error back or something that's unexpected or whatever. But it could be a lot harder to detect SQL injection. I would hope that were the case.
Yeah.
Since these are the guys teaching people with their cheat sheets and everything.
But yeah, those were, I guess that was it. Those are the top 5 of the 2013 OWASP
Now,
findings.
if they do put cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery under injection, then injection would forever be the number 1 on this list, I would think.
Oh, I wonder if that's why they did split it up, or maybe there are subtle differences in how they expected the injection. I mean,
I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that's that, and hope it was informative to everybody. I learned a lot about it.
That's right. So that has been all that we wanted to talk about for OWASP. If anybody is a web application pen tester like Mr. Betcher and want to come on and talk about some of the things we've discussed, please feel free to give us a holler on Twitter or on our Facebook fan page. If you want to come on and talk about anything, if you got a topic you think you'd like to discuss with us or give to our listeners, please feel free to hit us up for that too.
We have a Facebook fan page?
I know. I got 2 likes. One of them is me and one of them is my mama. So, that's always good. Mama likes my page. She doesn't know what it's about, but she's like, "Oh, it's yours, my boy. I'll let you know."
So I keep telling people I'll never get Facebook unless I have to do it for my job. Okay.
I don't think you'll ever need it for your job unless you're going to consider it a job.
I don't know. So I guess you would have to maintain it or updates to it or something like that. I don't know, but this may constitute as my job or one of my jobs, right? So yeah. I don't know. You may require me to get a Facebook account for that reason.
Well, it was like pulling teeth to get you a Twitter account. So you know how that goes. So,
yeah, I'm still learning about the twits and the tweets. Yeah,
I don't do anything on my Facebook account. I just mainly post science articles and security stuff and make lulls at people who get hacked. So that's all fun. I do. Yeah, that's all I do. So we're on iTunes. You can check us out. I think I changed the name, so it's Breaking Down Security with my last name, the Breaking Down Security podcast. We have an RSS feed. You can find that on the website at breakingsecurity.com. That's how you get to our website for our podcast. And I think that's it. Twitter handles. @BrianBreak and @BetcherPwned. You should probably change that to @BetcherGWapped or something. Just, maybe for a day or two. I don't know. So, but that was it for the week. And we'll be back next week with some more hot, sexy security awesomeness. And we hope you'll come back and listen. So
and stay safe out there.
That's right. For Brian and Brian, you have a good week. And this was Breaking Down Security.